This is Chris with Phoenix Gaming, and today we're going to talk about Ork Bikes. First, we're going to discuss and talk about the Warboss on Warbike, because, guess who's back? We're going to cover the Death Killer Wartrike, Warbikers, and Nobz on bikes, and talk about why I think these are some of the better units in the index, and probably some of the most underutilized. First, let's talk about the Warboss on bike. It was Legends, now it isn't. Looks pretty solid, better than 9th because he actually interacts with your army in some way. He can go into Nobz on bikes or regular war bikes, and I do love me some Ork Biker squads. They do, I had been using them to pretty good effect and had some pretty good success with them late into 9th edition. He gives them +1 to hit, which makes your claws and saws and stab is a lot more accurate. And then auto advancing 6 is pretty nice. And then Follow Me can get a unit of Nobz moving 14 inches. And then that's a 20-inch auto advance and charge when you declare your WH. So that makes for a pretty fast, hard-hitting unit with a ton of utility. There he is, base. He's got 12-inch movement, 5-up invuln. The big thing is that the DACA guns are assault and rapid fire. Now, they're not amazing, but they will throw a lot of dice, which is kind of cool. Then we look at the Death Killer Wartrike. He got cheaper. He's only 5 points more than the Warboss on bike. He does have better melee than he used to. He's one of the few units that actually got better in the fight phase rather than got worse. He has more wounds than the boss on bike, but the larger footprint means he's going to be tougher to move around and hide. But he is not a vehicle anymore. He's just mounted, so you don't have to worry about him getting picked up to anti-vehicle stuff. His assault weapons and auto advance 6 also make him just it really just makes him a variant Warboss on bike. If you put super cyborg body on him with the 9 wound chassis, you theoretically could give him 18 wounds. And actually, I mean, potentially he has infinite wounds. That's how Feel No Pains work, but we both know that's not how dice work. And he goes great in either Nobz or bikes because he's a big wound soak. And again, the other option I would give him is the fall back and shoot and charge because, again, that gives you a great utility choice. It allows you to advance and cleanse or advance and homers. And you could fall back and cleanse. You could fall back and homers. So he's got a lot of utility with that option there. There's his new data sheet. He's T6. He did go down in tough. No, he stayed the same. The Warboss on bike went down in toughness. Sorry. 9 wounds, like I said, 4-up save. The real weird thing about the Death Killer Wartrike is that it doesn't have the character keyword, but it has the leader keyword. And we'll kind of cover all that later. There's some weird interactions, and I will, towards the end of the video, kind of explain how a lot of the TOs I've spoken with are approaching this. Warbikers, they're 25 points per model in squads of 3 or 6. That's really cheap for a T6 3-wound chassis that moves 12 inches, and you get 4 wounds on the knob. And then in 10th, bikes can claim cover. DACA guns are assault, so you can get that advance and shoot or cleanse, like I said before. They do have a 6-up invuln. They lost the -1 to hit, but gained a 6-up invuln. So you're at least going to keep them on the table a little bit longer than you probably should. I like big squads of 6. I'm not saying that's the only way to run them. I'm saying that's just how I prefer them. Nobz on bikes. I'm super excited that these get all of the rules now. When you declare your WH, they can advance and charge. That makes me very happy. They're about 42 points a model. It's 125 for 3 of them, which to me is a little too much. Not a lot, just a little. Maybe drop them down to 120 or maybe like 115 because we know GW wants those multiples of 5 right now. But I think if they drop to like 120 or 115, they become 100% auto takes. Right now, I feel like you're only going to see players like me playing them, ones who are really looking at the utility and versatility of them rather than just going, oh, this is what everybody's running, copy-paste. The kill saws are good, but there's not enough dice. A unit puts out 6 dice, 9 on the WH, and they are strength 12, neg 3-2 damage, so they're pretty solid, but the problem for me is that there's just not enough dice coming out of that squad to be scary. They hit on 4s, so with the boss they'll hit on 3s, which means you're going to average 4 hits with your exploding 6s. So it's just not, that's not where I would be at. I would probably take the claws or the stabbas. I like both. Claws have better AP. The Stabbas are strength 8, but they have Lance, which means they're +1 to wound on the charge. And they're -1 AP instead of -2, but there's not a thing in the game that they won't wound on 4 or better, right? And so it just becomes, I don't know which one I like better. I like both of them, but they give you 3 attacks each, which means you go 9 or 12 if on the wall. And like I said, +1 to hit with the boss. And then the meaty, they got a 6-inch consolidation. Like, that is meaty, and they're 4 wounds. So they're T6, 4 wounds. And if they kill something, they get to just move 6 inches as long as they can either tag another enemy unit or tag an objective. Like, they will stick around a little longer than they probably should as long as you're picking your targets well. And then they will be able to just move around and get to places that they wouldn't normally get to because of the extra movement that they get. Before we jump into the list, the one things I wanted to talk about, like I said, I would talk more about it towards the end of the video. So the Warboss on bike is a leader, has the character keyword, but his data sheet does not tell you what units he can go into. This has not been fixed with an errata. I have emailed the GW rules team about this, and I have not gotten a response yet. The Death Killer Wartrike is a leader, but does not have the character keyword, but it says he can go into bikes. That creates a whole different interaction because, to the best of my knowledge, he is the only non-character unit that can attach to another unit. Now, when I've spoken to other TOs about this, I'm like, hey, man, like, this is a stupid interaction, and I'm pretty sure it's an oversight. And generally, the consensus is, yes, it's an oversight. It doesn't have the character keyword. It should have the character keyword. So, again, locally, he's going to be able to take enhancements. And I'm not the only Ork player. And I'm not the only Ork player that's liking these. So it's one of those where this isn't just to benefit me. This is to benefit everybody. And talking to different TOs who run GTs and larger events, that is the general consensus, is that, yeah, he should have the character keyword and he should be able to take enhancements. If you are one of those people who's a raw versus rye rules as intended person, this is one of those instances where I think you need to look at what's intended rather than what's written, because he's always been a character. There's never been an edition that model has been around where it hasn't been a character. And again, if you look at the fact that, again, to the best of my knowledge, he's the only non-character leader, I think that sets the precedent of, okay, he should have the character keyword. You can feel free to tell me in the comments why I'm wrong, and I will definitely hear you out. I'd be curious to hear other perspectives on it, but that is the way I would understand it, and that is the way every TO I've spoken to on it has understood it. We're going to go over a sample list. This one I'm actually going to be testing this week. I'm going to try and get games with it on Friday. I've got my League game on Thursday, and I'm going to be hopefully doing some Sigmar games earlier in the week, although it is Tuesday, so I guess I better get on that. I'm going to put the Wartrikes in the other spot for now, because they're not going to have enhancements anyway right now. And this is what we're looking at. Sample bike heavy list. Characters. Beast Boss on Squigosaur, and we're going to give him the Kill Choppa. Warboss on bike, we're going to give him Follow Me. We're going to take 40 Snaggas. Snaggas are really good. They're fairly cheap. They're pretty durable. Strength 5. The Feel No Pain helps out a lot. They're pretty solid. 2 transports. 2 Wartrikes. As I said before, jury's still out on whether they're supposed to be characters. 1 unit of Gretchen. 1 unit of 2 custom mega cannons. 1 unit of 2 tractor cannons. 10 Nobz with claws. They will go in a truck. The other truck will either have 10 Snaggas or 10 Gretchen. Depends on the game. 1 6 model unit of bikers. 2 3 model units of bikers. And I may consolidate that into 2 6 model units. 2 units of Nobz on bikes. And then my plan is to put the trikes with the bikes, and then the boss with the Nobz. So both trike, and that's why I may just make it 2 units of 6 rather than a unit of 6 and 2 units of 3, so that both the trikes have a big wound soak before you can get to them. The boss goes with 1 of the units of Nobz, and then the other unit of Nobz can just run around and play distraction card effects. Then, like I said, the unit of Nobz on bikes will get a 20-inch advance and charge on the wall. I'm going to run the Stabbas on them first, and then I'll test claws, because I think the Stabbas have more versatility. The claws, The stabbers are going to get more wounds through. The claws are going to allow for better armor saves. So we're going to try getting more wounds through first, and then we'll try the toning down somebody else's armor saves. I think the stabbers are going to decimate enemy infantry, and they will chip damage on vehicles unless they're like a Land Raider, something with a 2-up save. And even then, you'll probably still chip some, just because you're going to wound it on 4s and you're going to roll a lot of dice. You can spend a command point to make your 5s explode, so you can actually get them like getting more hits through than they probably should. The saws will do more damage, and okay, so saws, like I said, they just feel kind of poopy because it's 2 attacks each. I'm not a fan of the way that GW handled kill saws, but I think that is the inherent issue with the free war gear that we are seeing now, is that you just have certain things that you're never going to use. You know, choppas are free, but then big choppas are free, so why the hell would I ever take a choppa? It just doesn't make sense. Squigosaur is going to be just a distraction Carnifex. He's going to get devastating wounds from brutal or kill choppa, and then he's got anti-vehicle, anti-monster. So if he touches an enemy unit that is a vehicle or monster, he will do the Lord's work into it. And if he can get stuck in, he's just going to be a hassle. He does have a 5-up invuln and a 4-up feel no pain, so he should stick around long enough to take some pressure off of things, especially if I can ear weak go him to give him bonus advance, bonus charge, just to get him up the table. The tractor cannons can start in strategic reserve if I need to. If I'm playing against a very shooting army, like a very gun-heavy army, like a Tau or, you know, some Drukhari builds. Actually, a lot of them right now. I'm the only clown running a lot of melee, to the best of my knowledge. Just a very gun-heavy Marine army. I might put the tractor cannons in reserves just to kind of push them up the board easier. Those things are dumb. They have a D6 plus 1 damage, and they're devastating wounds and anti-fly 2-up. So if I touch anything with the fly keyword with them, you're taking a D6 plus 1 mortal wounds. So they'll chew through Riptides. They'll chew through any the Harlequins transports, a lot of the Eldar transports and tanks. They'll chew through so many things. You just have to get them through. They are a single shot. They're not going to be amazing, but they're going to be very good. The big thing here is that the tractor cannons are largely just a distraction. I probably should run a single unit of 3 with the KMKs and then put a mech in them, but that's not what I'm doing. I'm going to try this first. I do understand that there are probably better ways to run it, but I want to give this a feel, and I can always tweak from there. Here's what's going on this week. I've got a lot of games on deck. League Round 1 is Thursday. Like I said, I'm playing against GSC. We did a live stream on that. I'll do a recap on that after the game, probably Friday morning. And then with this list that I'm talking about, I'm planning to play either homers or cleanse most games. Deploying homers is probably going to be the better option because the bike mobility gets me a lot of places. I'm not going to have a ton of OC on the table outside of my B-Snaggas, so I'm going to need to rely on my mobility over my ability to control objectives. I think either engage or behind enemy lines is going to be a good take. Bikes can get into deployment zones turn 1 some games, turn 2 others. It just depends on how much space my opponent gives me. And if I go first, there's a lot of variables that affect that. But if I can get 2 units in turn 2 or 3, I can make up for not getting any turn 1, and that's okay. And I do think I can run tactical very well with this list. I just don't know if I'm going to be able to kill a lot of units. There's a ton of -1 AP in this list. So it's one of those where I'll probably play test it with some tactical also. I do think the KMKs are just one of the best guns that we have. They're strength 12. I think they're -2 AP and D6 damage. And they're D6 shots. So 2 of those can actually lock down a side of the board pretty well. Just because if somebody knows that they can pop out and then just throw, on average, 7 dice at something, knowing that you could potentially take 2 or 3 D6 damage in a single shooting phase is going to keep people a little skeptical. Some people won't care. They'll just throw their stuff out there, and that's fine because it is ballistic skill 4. You know, it's a calculated risk. But generally, I think the KMKs are going to be a better take than the tractor cannons. I've just got the tractor cannons because they're funny. I think they're silly. They're dumb. They're not going to be a fun interaction for some people. We've all talked about how much devastating wounds is not very fun to play with, but when those are the tools you have, like, that's what you have to use. That's going to wrap it up. Big shout out to my immortals. Captain Too Tall, The Real Donnie G, Lord Wellingstone, and Daniel Bodecker. You guys are awesome. Once again, your support allows me to keep running events, so indirectly you are helping me build and maintain the community. Thank you. And links on the screen, links in the description. Thanks for watching.